Chris Blevins. I'm with the Wise News. I have put together a series of interviews of people who knew or were involved with Clifton Branham, a notorious outlaw of the Appalachian Mountains of southwest Virginia and eastern Kentucky. These interviews took place in 1904 to 1905. I endeavored to contact as many as I could who Clifton mentioned in his confession, and others who were referred by these people who witnessed the life of Clifton. I was able to interview his father, John C. Branham. Here is his story.
Clifton and Tandy was a trial for us. We done our best to raise him right. Him and Tandy were great disappointments. They seemed to always find trouble. When I got home from the war, I took to trying to teach him the right way to live. I had seen too much of the things men do to each other in war and had my belly full of it. Tandy had already been in trouble before I went off to the war. His ma had done her best with him while I was gone, but he seemed to just find trouble and get in with the wrong fellas. Clifton was taking after him too much, but I couldn't get it in his head that he wasn't doing right. I think most parents tries to do right by their family and raise good upstanding kids. Mahalia and me did our best, but it seems that there is always that one or two who just won't listen to reason. They go off and take the wrong road in life. After I got the cabin built on the Owl Branch after the war, Joe and Dick had taken off over in Kentucky. Tandy was still around and getting into all kinds of deviltry. Clifton didn't pay me no mind, but started following Tandy around. He'd rather run to trouble with his big brother than do what was right and help on the farm. He took off when he was 12, saying I wasn't doing him right, but it was the other way around. He was gone about 4 years before I seen him again. When he came back, he had the girl Nancy with him. He said he wanted to marry her, but he was only 16, and her mother wouldn't give her up. The girl stayed with us nearly 2 years, before her mom finally gave in, and they was married. They stayed with us a spell and had a baby early in 1881. Clifton seemed to have growed up a bit during this time. He was helping on the farm and doing stuff like a good son. But something changed in him after the baby got here. He must have got the rambling fever. They moved out and went to several places over in Kentucky. I didn't see him much for a while after that. I don't know what he was doing. My daughter Betty sent word that they had another baby in the spring of the next year. She said the baby girl was pitiful. She had a rose cancer on her face and was crying all the time. They was moving around Kentucky a lot in the next few years. Some said that Clifton was getting caught up in a feud over there and was headed for big trouble. He was working above Pikeville when they had another baby, a boy this time. They said he took to moonshining and fell in with a bad bunch. Along about that time, they had another baby, another girl. Tandy showed up again and got Clifton to go along with him and another feller to do a job for Bad Ira Mullins. They killed old Henry Vanover in Burdine. The law caught up with them, and they both got sent to the pen for life. We had done our best to raise good men and women, and for the most part we had. You just can't do but so much. They get what they think is growed up and take whatever path they want. Dick come by the house after seeing Clifton in the pen and said he done got religion and had changed his life. I decided to take Mahalia to see him, and we went plumb across Kentucky to do it. Sure enough, he seemed to have found the Lord and was living his best life even if he was in the pen. We visited him several times over the next 10 years. He was a lot better off than Tandy. Tandy went plumb crazy in the pen. He was sent to an asylum. Along about 95 or 6, they said Tandy got well and got his senses back. They let him go. He came back here to Wise County for a short time, but had gone back over in Kentucky to Pikeville and ended up in a fight with a young kid named Willis and got himself shot and killed. That was in August of 96. I knowed he was not going to come to a good end early on. He was set on doing wrong from afore I got home from the war. It finally caught up with him. Doesn't make it no easier to bury your child, though. But we had hope for Clifton now, 'cause he seemed to be on the right path in life. Doing good and leading men to the Lord, and living a good, clean life even if he was in the pen. Nan and the kids came back to Wise County and we helped them as best we could. George was kind of following in the footsteps of Tandy and Clifton for a time. He got caught burning a neighbor's fences and got a real whooping for it. I think that kind of set him on a better path. Anyways, he didn't get into no more trouble after that. George turned out to be a decent man after all that. I don't think he ever went to see Clifton, though. Don't know if he ever forgive him for making life so hard on him and his ma and sisters. Ida ended up marrying Dave Fleming, a nephew of Billy's. That was about 97, 5 years before Clifton got out. In 1902, Kentucky had a parole law come in effect. William J., who everybody called Cripple Billy, was married to Nancy's sister Patsy. He set to work to get Clifton paroled. The deputy warden was in favor of recommending Clifton, and Billy joined him at the parole board hearing. Together, the three of them convinced the board he was a changed man. The board recommended him for parole, and Governor Beckham gave him a pardon. Next time I seen him was after he came back to Billy and Patsy's. They showed up at the house, and we had a happy reunion. Clifton played the piano, and we sang some hymns. He said he hadn't seen Nan and the kids, but was going to send for them. I didn't see him again after that, until his trial. I don't know what happened for sure. I just heard tales from ever which away about how he done shot and killed Nan, and took his daughter Liz, and ran off to Kentucky. Turned out he left her with Dick in 3 Mile, and went on up to Beaver in Floyd County. He got into more trouble there, and was on the run. They said he killed old Ance Moore for $50, a gun and a girl who he married. He'd got caught in White House, and they brung him back to Wise. Lee Greer and me went to the trial. Clifton was smarting off to his lawyers, and just sassy to the judge too. He was not that same man who had come by the house when he came home. It was hard to see how Clifton had changed so quickly and done some really bad things. Mahalia took it real hard. He was making some crazy talk about being raised from the dead. One jailer said he had threatened to burn the jailhouse down. He said he told him to go ahead. The county could build another one, but he'd be gone, and he'd watch him burn alive. Needless to say, he didn't do it. Just crazy talk. Such a disappointment and sad ending when they hung him.
Clifton's mother, Mahalia Branham, gave us some insight into Clifton's early years. She shared her struggles to keep him from trouble.
Clifton was a sickly child. He was always puny until about 10-year-old. He was just a baby when John C. went off to war. We struggled a lot in those days. We had to hide enough food away to keep ourselves alive. Them soldiers would come through and take whatever they wanted. I took my 2 oldest boys over in Virginia to get them joined up with the Army, same as their dad. 'Twarn't safe for them at home. Snipers was shooting young men who weren't with the Army. They was glad to get them in the Army, and I thought they'd be much safer there. Times was hard, but we got through until John C. and my boys came home from the war. I done my best to teach him right and take him to church whenst we could go. 'Tweren't always safe to be out and away from the house during the war. He wasn't always a good boy, but his brother Tandy kept me busy, 'cause he would always get into a ruckus. Clifton seemed to take after him whenever he could. Anyways, when John C. and the boys got home, I had much more help getting things done. We had to pretty much start over afresh after the war. About everything had been taken from us. Clifton tried to help his pa build a cabin, but he weren't much good 'cause of being so sickly. By the time he started getting past all that, Joe and Richard had already helped John C. get the cabin built. When John C. and Clifton moved into it, Joe and Richard took out for Kentucky. Clifton started to get his head full of notions and nonsense. He thought John C. wasn't doing him right, so he got it in his head to leave home and go to Kentucky, too. He 'tweren't but about 12 or 13 when he lit out, and the fool thing took off after it done got cold and hard to travel. He stayed gone for years. I still had 3 girls and Tandy at home at that time, so we was busy. The next time I seen him was when he came here with a girl he wanted to marry. She was Tandy Branham's young'un. I knowed her dad had been killed in the war. Her mother, Elizabeth, wouldn't agree to the marriage, but John C. let her stay, but I thought it was a mistake. I put her to work. If we was going to feed her, she was going to earn it. Anyways, after she'd been here a couple of months or so, her brother, Gooseneck Branham, come bringing the rest of her clothes. He said that Elizabeth was still not going to give her up to Mary, but in time that changed. I reckon she figured it would do no good to hold out since she weren't going to come back nohow. They was married and she got with child. Clifton was doing right at this time. I had them going to church, and he was helping John C. in the field and with the chores around here. Nancy was doing a lot of the housework, too. It was in the dead of winter when the baby came, a beautiful baby girl. But when spring came, they lit out for Kentucky. Clifton said he needed to start a place of his own. They was gone for nearly 4 years. They had 3 young'uns and another on the way when I seen them again. Their second girl was very sickly. She had some kind of ailment on her face that must have caused her a lot of pain. The poor thing died when she was only about 3-year-old. Clifton had fell in with some bad men and commenced making shine. There was a lot of talk about the things he was supposed to done, but you know a mother don't want to hear that. Nancy was with child again when they lit out again for Kentucky. Didn't hear nothing about them for nearly a year. Then we heard that he done got hisself arrested for killing old Henry Vanover. Next thing I heard was he was in the pen for life. John C. took me to see him a few times while he was there. He warmed my heart when he said he found Jesus. Clifton had done gone to preaching and turning men to the Lord. He was a changed man. When the parole law came in, he was put up for parole, and the governor gave him a pardon. He'd been gone over 14 year, and his kids was near grown, and his oldest girl, Ida, done went and married a Dave Fleming. They had 2 young'uns when Clifton got home. They ain't never seen their grandpa. He came by the house after he had got to Billy and Patsy's. We sung some hymns and had a glad reunion on that visitation. There was trouble on the way, though. There was rumors of goings-on betwixt Dave Fleming and Clifton's youngest, Liz. Clifton didn't know about it at that time. All that came out later. It set up bad blood betwixt Dave and Clifton. Next thing I heard was that Dave had tried to kill Clifton, but Clifton beat him to the draw and shot him off his horse. Then Nancy got involved with the mess and accused Clifton of some bad things and threatened him with a rock. She said she would have his neck broke for it. I don't think it was a fair trial. If Nancy had picked up a rock, then Clifton was well within his rights to defend himself. The jury didn't see it that-a-way, though. They found him guilty. Judge Matthews sentenced him to hang. I hope that Clifton found forgiveness for all the things he done. He did say he done some very bad things, but I know that Jesus forgives them 'cause he asked him to. My son wasn't as bad as everyone says. In the end, he was a good man.
I have more interviews coming soon. The series on Clifton Branham will continue. I'm Chris Blevins for the Wise News.